Hi guys, in this video I just wanted to talk a little bit about working with unconditional love and forgiveness if you've experienced a trauma. I feel like this is something that I've been asked a few times, quite a few times actually, when I've been running workshops, and I've spoken about my story. So yeah, I just want to address this just to get out of the way. So in my childhood I experienced sexual abuse and violence, physical violence, and then toxic relationships with men as I grew up, after I grew up, and so on and so forth. And I've been personally on a journey of unconditionally loving that experience, unconditionally loving myself. A deep healing journey of that, really. Working with my emotions, working with my beliefs to transform and release, and kind of really use that experience, those experiences that I had in my childhood and growing up, to heal and transform and use them in a positive way, to create for myself, a trajectory into the light from that level of challenge. And something that's been asked a lot, as I mentioned when I've spoken about this in workshops and things like that, is, well, how can you forgive someone who did something like that to you? And I think this really goes to the heart of unconditional love, and in particular, unconditional love as a healing energy, as a healing fact, really, that we are unconditional love, and that unconditional love allows us to heal ourselves. And really to heal our world as a reflection of healing ourselves. And I think this is a really important and apt question, especially for those who have experienced trauma, particularly at the hands of someone else, and they're wanting to forgive, or they're wanting to bring unconditional love. So the first thing I always find myself saying is, that it's important to bring unconditional love to yourself first. And what I mean by that is, if you have rage and hatred, which I did, towards the person who did that to you, maybe towards the world, maybe towards yourself, maybe towards your higher self. I had all of these. And, you might have layers of that, which I did. And to bring unconditional love to that first, and to love that in ourselves, to really, and by loving it, I mean letting it flow. I don't mean going and burning down someone's house necessarily, but you can imagine yourself doing that. I've done so many healings where I've really let that energy flow in myself. Imagine yourself doing this, kind of let yourself have the permission to feel the level of rage and hatred and recrimination and judgment or whatever that you're feeling, and to really bring unconditional love to that. I will say I've done this in kind of a somewhat controlled environment. I teach unconditional love healing, and I have done in the past. It's kind of been, I've done it in a way that's structured and loving for myself. So, you want to find a loving way to do that, however works for you. But yeah, that's the first piece, is to bring unconditional love to that emotion, and to the belief, whatever it is that's kind of at the heart of that emotion, of hatred or rage at the other person. You want to be able to bring love to that experience in yourself. And you want to be able to do that enough that with no agenda, no attachment, because unconditional love, remember, is not, it doesn't have an agenda. And that can take some adjusting for us, as humans, in a world, that we've been coming from, in the paradigm that we've been in. So to remember that, therefore, it's not about healing that hatred to get rid of it. It's not about, it's about genuine unconditional love for my own hatred. Ironically, but really this is not irony, this is the nature of existence, by having that level of unattachment, that level of unconditional love for that part of ourselves, it actually is what sets us free on a deep energetic level. Because if we can really love it and really witness it and really take the gift, And as many of us may know, if you've done a lot of healing with anger, rage, hatred, there's always a gift. There's always a gift. In my experience, it's usually something to do with boundaries, usually something to do with my power. There's always something in it that I'm reclaiming by unconditionally loving it. And then there's elements of it that I'm letting go, just releasing into the universe that I don't need to hold on to anymore. But there's always a positive reclaiming in that experience, in my experience, even if it's just that I can relax, but there's a witnessing in the anger and the hatred itself. All right, so bringing unconditional love from a non-attached place and really just being with that in whatever way. From that place of having, to the extent that we need to, letting it take the time it takes with no pressure on how long that is, from really allowing ourselves to be loved in that, that's where, in my embodied experience, the doorway can open to forgive, to unconditionally love, then in the direction of the other. And again, this doesn't, you don't want this to be a process of should, because that's not helpful, especially if you've been through trauma and someone's saying you should forgive, you should, what does should even mean in that context? So you really want to be loving your own pain first. It just comes to a place in my experience where the doorway is open for you and them, and it's the same doorway. And so ultimately, for me, it's like you recognize in your freedom, their freedom, in your forgiveness for yourself, your forgiveness for them. It's almost like forgiveness is this absolute that just washes everything away. And one thing that has helped me, apart from really loving my anger and hatred, one thing that's really helped me open that door and just and unconditionally love the person who did that to me when I was a child, is understanding, which I did through my process. I became aware of what they had experienced in their life, and that in whatever way, for whatever reason, they had succumbed to that darkness, that negativity that they had experienced a lot of before I came across their path. They came across my path as a young child. They had succumbed to that and they were lost to that, and they had kind of acted from that place. And understanding the level of, without condoning it, because this is not about condoning negativity, but just understanding mechanically the lostness to that, the disempowerment in that. In fact, in one sense, the same level of disempowerment in a certain way that I experienced as a victim of their behavior then. And for me, what they were looking for in a very lost and very painful way, which I wouldn't condone or want to emulate, what they were looking for is to be able to connect with someone else, feel a sense of connection by making someone else feel as lost and disempowered and hated by the universe as they were. Again, not the best way of going about it for them to do that to me, right? Not the best way of going about it. And from my perspective, once I've healed all of the negativity that I experienced and took on from that action that they did to me, and I've healed all of my hatred and pain around that, just compassion. Just compassion for being that lost, being in that much pain, not even being able to see the way to the light properly. And I feel in that, and this might sound strange, I don't know, but it's true for me. I am so grateful that I get to forgive them. I am the way to the light. for them. Not in the way they expected, not with the power dynamic that they expected. All that pain of this idea of power over and someone's of course we know like none of that is true. But I am so grateful that for both of our souls, I can forgive, I can see, I can love my own pain from it, all of the darkness. That's in one sense very similar to what they did, what they experienced, their darkness. And I can choose through love to forgive for both of us and set us both free from that. And that kind of power, which is not an imbalanced power, it's a deep intimacy power between our souls, my soul and the person who attacked me. I don't need anything from them or anything. I don't need them to understand. But that option that I have to do that, I really want to have that available for anyone else who's been through something like what I went through to experience if they want. I don't think they should, or it's better, or, anything like that. But knowing how it feels for me, knowing the depth of the experience of homecoming in that, and the depth of my own true power, which is love, that I can experience in that, from something that, often gets so kind of called just so horrible and it's such a disempowered thing to experience, which is true, it is when you're experiencing it, something like that, being sexually, and physically assaulted violently as a young child. There is heaps of disempowerment in that experience, and all of the mess that you can imagine. And, being able to use that in a positive way and transform it into this level of peace and forgiveness. And it's not like a holier than thou thing. It's none of that stuff. Yeah, it's just total peace and freedom. And yeah, a feeling of intimacy with myself and with that person. But not in a way that needs anything or needs to be attached or needs to be, it's just, I don't know, it's freedom. And so I wish that as an option. I want to offer that as an option for anyone who has been through something really. It doesn't have to sound the same as mine if you've been through trauma. It might sound different, might be something else. But I really want to offer that as something that's possible, to bring unconditional love and forgiveness no matter what has happened to you, and that you can do that. And it starts with loving our own pain about it and being really honest and authentic about how much, pain and rage or whatever, hatred we might have. And then, really following that path of unconditional love. And unconditional love takes us deep, takes us all the way into ourselves and all the way up to ourselves. So I wanted to share that. I hope that's helpful or relevant for you, or someone you know. Wishing you so much unconditional love in your day, and I look forward to connecting in perfect timing.